I want you to think about the last time your heart was actually pounding, not a little quick pounding, hands shaking a bit, breath coming fast. That buzzy, alive feeling running straight through your chest like you just got plugged into something. Now, here's the question I need you sitting with before we go anywhere else today. Were you scared or were you into someone? For real, take a real second on that. Your body generally can't answer this one on its own. A racing heart is a racing heart no matter what caused it. Sweaty palms don't come with a label attached explaining themselves. The only thing standing between you calling that feeling fear and you calling it chemistry is a story your brain writes after the fact fast, using whatever's closest and easiest to believe. Here's the second question. Have you ever met someone during a fight, emergency, or a night that went wrong fast and felt something for them that felt bigger than anything you'd ever felt in months? Has some quiet part of you ever wondered afterward whether that feeling was really about them at all? Hold on to that. We're coming back to it. I actually want you to pause for 3 seconds. Seriously. Picture their face if someone came to mind. This goes for every single one of you, men, women, everyone listening. I bet someone's face already showed up. I'm Dr. Nika. This is Dominion of Fear, and we're going to go deep on one of the strangest and dangerous facts about being human. Your nervous system was never built with separate wiring for scared and turned on. It's the same circuit, which means the person who terrifies you a little on a first date and the person who thrills you on a first date might be doing the identical thing to your body, and the only difference is which label your brain grabs first. By the end of this episode, you're going to look back at your own dating history a bit differently, maybe uncomfortably differently. So settle in because I want to walk you through this whole thing properly. You're also going to understand why some of you keep going back to the exact people and same experiences that scare you the most, and why so many of us pay money to feel terrified on purpose. Let's start with the body because everything else builds off this one foundation. When something scares you, your whole system floods at once, and it happens so fast you never get a vote in it. Heart rate jumps, breathing speeds up and goes shallow. Blood pulls away from your stomach and rushes out toward your arms and legs, which is exactly why real fear can make you feel a little sick or wipe out your appetite clean. Pupils widen, palms go damp, muscles tighten in places you're not even thinking about. Your jaw, shoulders, the back of your neck, this whole cascade happens in under a second, faster than you could ever consciously choose to feel it because it was never built to wait for your permission. That cascade is your nervous system's oldest survival program. Most people know fight or flight, but there are actually 4 main responses. Fight, you push back. Flight, you run. Freeze, you go still and hope the threat passes. And fawn, you try to please or appease the threat to stay safe. All 4 use the same basic flood of chemicals, and that same flood can get labeled as attraction when the situation is right. This is true for every gender. The circuit doesn't care who you are. Your body doesn't check your gender before it decides to light up. Now pause. Think about the last time you felt exactly that. Was it actually fear? Now go back through what I just described and hold it next to this. Think about the last time you locked eyes with someone you were totally into, or someone walked into a room and your body reacted before your brain caught up. What actually happened in that exact moment, physically? Heart racing, breath quick and shallow, pupils wide, stomach doing something strange, muscles tight, alert, hyper aware of their every move. That's not similar. That's identical. Word for word, your body runs one single program for something big is happening right now, and it never tells you in advance whether the big thing is danger or desire. It fires the alarm and hands you the job straight to you, with no built-in safeguard to make sure you get it right. I want you to feel this, not just hear it. If you can, close your eyes for a second. Remember a time your heart was racing hard enough that you could feel it in your throat. Palms a little damp, that tight, jumpy feeling right behind your ribs, breath shallow, everything blurring except the one thing in front of you. Is that fear or is that attraction? There isn't a right answer. That description fits a person walking into a job interview they're terrified of, just as well as it fits a person about to see someone they've been crushing on for weeks. Both people are having the same physical experience. The only difference is the sentence their brain wrote to explain it. It just floods the system and waits for a story. Here's proof, and it's the backbone of everything. Imagine you're halfway across a bridge. It sways every time you take a step. You can hear the cables creak beneath your feet. You're trying not to look down because the canyon below you is hundreds of feet deep. Your heart is already pounding. Then, before your heartbeat has settled, someone attractive smiles at you and asks if you'll answer a few questions. That's not a hypothetical. That is exactly what two researchers did. Back in the 1970s, two researchers wanted to know something that sounds almost too simple to test. Could you make a person feel romantic attraction using nothing but fear? Not by changing who the other person was, just fear, borrowed and handed off. They picked a canyon outside Vancouver with two very different bridges. One was low, wide, solid enough that you'd never notice your feet were technically above the ground at all. The other was a narrow wooden suspension bridge strung high over the canyon, swaying with every step. Low handrails, the kind of crossing where your stomach drops before your foot even lands on the planks. They stationed an attractive woman partway across each bridge, posing as part of an unrelated survey. As men crossed, she'd stop them, ask a few quick questions, hand them a brief writing task, then offer her name and number in case they had follow-up thoughts. Same woman, same questions. The only thing that changed between the two groups was which bridge they just finished crossing seconds before they met her. The men off the shaky bridge called her back at a far higher rate than the men off the calm one. The stories they wrote during that quick task, based on a picture with nothing romantic about it, were loaded with more romantic and sexual imagery too. Their hearts were already pounding from nearly losing their footing above a canyon. And the second an attractive woman showed up right inside that window, their brain grabbed the leftover buzz sitting in their chest and rewrote the whole story on the spot. It has to be her. Here's the detail that locks the whole thing down. They ran it again, same two bridges, except this time a man stopped the crossers instead of a woman. The effect disappeared completely. No jumping calls or romantic content in the writing. Scared men don't just get friendlier from the adrenaline in general. Something specific happens the moment the fear has somewhere believable to land. Take that away, and the illusion falls apart instantly. None of those men were lying to themselves on purpose. Not one walked off that bridge thinking, I'm about to trick myself into a crush. Their body created a real, measurable state, and their brain, working fast and more than a little lazy, looked around for the closest believable explanation and pinned the whole feeling right there. Every one of them walked away convinced they met someone special, and not one ever found out what actually happened inside his own brain and body. Congratulations, your brain just promoted a panic attack into a soulmate. Similar experiments have been done with women as the participants too. When the physical state is already high and the situation is ambiguous, the same mislabeling happens. The circuit is shared. So why does this happen at all? There's a second experiment that nails down the actual rule underneath it. and it's a completely different setup. In the early 1960s, researchers at Columbia told a group of male college students they were testing a new vitamin, then checking their eyesight afterward. What most of them actually got injected with was adrenaline, the same chemical your body dumps into your system the instant real fear hits. Crazy. I know, the experiments they did. Some men were told exactly what to expect: racing heart, shaking hands, a flush in the face. Others were told nothing. So when the racing heart hit, they had no ready explanation in their pocket. Each man was then placed in a waiting room with someone secretly working for the study. With some men, this person acted giddy and playful, cracking jokes, flying paper airplanes. With others, the same person got irritated and started complaining loudly, working himself into a mood. The men who already understood why their heart was racing stayed level the whole time. They had their explanation in hand, so the other person's mood barely touched them. But the men who had no idea why their body had lit up borrowed their explanation from whoever was in the room. Around the playful one, they felt playful. Around the irritated one, they felt irritated. Same racing heart in every single one of them. The only thing that changed was who was standing there when their brain went looking for a reason to hand the feeling to. Put those two studies side by side, and you get the rule this entire episode is built on. Your brain builds the physical state first and figures out what to call it second. And it grabs its answer from whatever's closest, not from whatever actually caused it. That's not a fluke from a bridge in Canada. It's how the whole system runs, proven twice, decades apart, two completely different groups of men. Later research has shown the effects in this particular study can be more modest than the original paper suggested, and the replications have been mixed. But the core principle has held up in many other studies. When your body is activated and you don't have a clear reason, your brain will borrow a reason from the environment. I've heard plenty of stories of people who fell hard for each other after working the same disaster shift. Firefighters who started dating after nights that nearly killed them, emergency room staff who became inseparable after a brutal weekend, soldiers who formed bonds under fire that felt deeper than anything back home, couples who met during blackouts or hurricanes and swore the connection was destiny. Shared high arousal can turn the volume up so high that the ordinary filters we usually use disappear. Your nervous system doesn't date people, it dates adrenaline. Not literally, of course, but sometimes it behaves that way. And I'm not saying this to take your date or whoever to a dangerous situation, but haunted houses could work. Now, here's a question worth stopping on. Why would your body ever be built this sloppy on purpose? Researchers have suggested that long before anyone had the luxury of meeting a partner over a slow dinner, most of human history involved finding a mate under dangerous conditions, out in the open, exposed to real threat. And I just thought of Flintstones. They're sitting on rock chairs and have a rock table. But anyway, under those conditions, bonding fast with someone during shared danger wasn't a glitch. It was useful. Two people who paired up quickly while their bodies were already flooded with survival chemicals didn't waste time slowly building trust while an actual threat circled nearby. Fast bonding under fear kept people together and safer as a pair than they'd have been apart. The exact wiring that tricks a modern person into mistaking a scary date for true love is the same wiring that once helped two frightened humans huddle through an actual storm and come out the other side still a team. It never got the memo that fear mostly comes from group chats and traffic now instead of predators. It just keeps running the same old program on new material. Picture your body as a radio picking up a strong signal, static and noise, all mixed together, no label attached yet. Your brain's whole job is to tune that static to the nearest station and call it a channel. Stand on a scary bridge and it tunes to the fear station. Stand on a scary bridge and immediately meet someone attractive, and sometimes that exact same static gets turned to the attraction station instead. purely because that station happened to be closer. I bet every single one of you just remembered someone. Let's play with this before we move forward, because I want you to actually feel it. I'm going to describe a physical state, and I want you to guess honestly whether it's fear or attraction before I tell you. Heart pounding hard enough that you feel it in your throat. A tight, jumpy feeling right behind your ribs. Breath a little shallow, like you forgot to take a full one. A strange hyper focus where everything around you blurs except the one thing in front of you. Here's the answer, and it's the whole point wrapped into one demonstration. There isn't a right answer. That description fits a person walking into a job interview they're terrified of just as well as it fits a person about to see someone they've been crushing on for weeks. Both people in that moment are having the identical physical experience. The only difference is the sentence their brain wrote to explain it. And that sentence gets written so fast, almost nobody ever stops to question if it's right. So ask yourself again, was it really chemistry, or was your heart simply looking for a story? Now let's go somewhere your first draft of this idea probably never took you, because misattribution only explains the spark. It doesn't explain why some people get stuck feeling it on a loop for years, or why the most dangerous person in a room is so often the one everyone else can't stop watching. That's a different mechanism, and it's the one that actually keeps people trapped. Think about the last horror movie that scared you, not while you were watching it, going to the bathroom, or walking back to your car afterward in the dark. Every shadow looked different, every sound seemed louder. You knew nothing was there, but your body hadn't gotten the message yet. That leftover charge is the same one we've been talking about. Once safety is confirmed, the physical state doesn't vanish. It shows as excitement, mastery, a high. That's why a good horror movie can leave you buzzing for hours. Why walking out of a haunted house laughing feels better than walking in. Why true crime can become almost addictive. You're lighting up the same ancient circuit and then giving it a safe place to land. Here's a question. Why do slot machines work better than a machine that just pays out every single time you play? You think a guaranteed reward would be more addictive than an unpredictable one. It's the opposite, and it's one of the most replicated findings in behavioral psychology. A reward that shows up on a random, unpredictable schedule gets chased far harder and far longer than a reward that shows up reliably. Researchers call it a variable reinforcement schedule. Animals trained on it will keep pressing a lever long after the reward stops coming entirely, far longer than animals trained on a lever that always paid out and then went quiet. Predictable reward is easy to walk away from. Unpredictable reward is impossible to walk away from because some part of the brain stays convinced the next pull might be the one. So when the good stuff comes at random times, your brain gets hooked harder than when it comes on a steady schedule. That's why some people stay stuck. Now hold that up against a person who runs hot and cold, warm and attentive one week, distant and cutting the next, then suddenly warm again right when you'd almost given up. That's not a personality quirk. That's a random reward pattern wearing a human face. And it's a far stronger hook than steady, reliable affection ever is, purely because of how unpredictable it is. Now picture someone staring at their phone, typing a message, deleting it, waiting, checking, typing again, deleting again. The person on the other end is warm one day, gone the next, then suddenly perfect right when the hope was almost dead. I watch people do this for hours. Their nervous system treats that phone the same way it treats a slot machine. This is a larger part of why the most consistent, emotionally available person in someone's life so often gets called boring, while the unpredictable one gets called exciting. Chemistry. Can't stop thinking about them. The nervous system isn't rating character, it's rating unpredictability, and it mistakes unpredictability for intensity and passion every single time. Layer the misattribution effect we just spent half this episode proving on top of that, and you get the actual answer to why certain dangerous people read as magnetic instead of repellent. It's never one thing alone. It's fear from the uncertainty, arousal from not knowing what version of them you'll get, both running through the identical circuit, both getting filed under the same label by a brain that was never built to separate them, and real warmth in that mix during the good stretches. And the brain doesn't follow the bad stretches as a warning. It follows the whole pattern as passion, because passion is far more a satisfying story than emitting the buzz we partly dread the entire time. This is also the honest answer to the question almost everyone who's ever been in something they knew was bad for them eventually asks out loud. I know this isn't good for me. Why can't I stop? It's not weakness and it's not poor judgment. It's the identical mechanism running a slot machine, running underneath a relationship instead of a lever. Every unpredictable high after a rough stretch doesn't just feel good. It feels good the exact same way a jackpot after a long dry spell feels good, because your brain briefly thought it had figured out the pattern and it got a reward it wasn't fully expecting. That kind of reward hits harder than a reward you saw coming from a mile away, every single time, no exceptions. Walking away from something like that doesn't feel like relief. It feels like walking away from a machine you're convinced is due for a win. And that conviction is precisely what keeps people sitting at the table long after the odds have made it obvious they should leave. Your heart isn't lying to you. It's just answering a different question than the one you asked. Here's the piece that actually turns this from an interesting fact into something worth using in your own life. You now have a real test, one built on two separate mechanisms instead of a vague feeling. And it's a lot harder to talk yourself out of than a gut instinct is. Test one, straight from the bridge. What happened in the hour before you met this person or the hour before the feeling hit? Not the year before, not the general vibe of your week, the actual hour. An argument, a close call in traffic, stress you were already carrying before they ever walked through the door. If the honest answer is yes, that doesn't make the feeling fake. It means you owe yourself patience before crowning it permanent. Give it one completely ordinary afternoon somewhere down the line, nothing dramatic happening beforehand, and see if it survives. Real connection survives boring. Borrowed adrenaline almost never does. Test two, straight from the slot machine. Is the good feeling steady, or does it only spike hard right after a bad stretch? If the best you felt about someone keeps sliding right after the worst you felt about them, that's not chemistry building. That's a random reward pattern, and your nervous system is responding exactly the way it's built to respond to one, whether or not the person running it knows what they're doing. Everything we talked about doesn't just explain dating, it explains cults. It explains charismatic leaders who feel electric in the middle of chaos, why crowds can become intoxicating. It explains why some people mistake chaos for purpose. Think about political rallies where the energy feels bigger than any individual, stadium crowds that make people do things they would never do alone, financial bubbles that feel like destiny until they don't, religious revivals that leave people change, mass panic that spreads faster than information. Heightened emotion can shape group behavior in ways that feel profound in that moment. The same circuit that turns leftover fear into attraction can turn leftover fear into loyalty, devotion, or the sense that you finally found something that matters. The wiring doesn't care what story you attach to it. It just needs a story. That's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain would rather have a convincing story than no story at all. I want to close with two questions I opened this episode with, because now you got the tools to actually answer them for yourself. Some of you already know exactly who that person was the second I said it back at the start. The one from the fight, the emergency, the night that went wrong. I'm not telling you that connection wasn't real. Plenty of relationships born out of chaos last a lifetime. What I'm telling you is that fear and uncertainty make a spark feel far bigger and far more certain than it might actually deserve to feel in that exact moment. And the only way to know which kind of spark you got this time spent outside of whatever produced the fear in the first place. And honestly, about whether the good moments are steady or only ever arriving right after the bad ones. Your heart was pounding, and somewhere in your memory right now, you probably already got a moment lined up where you're not entirely sure anymore whether that was fear or chemistry. That's not a failure on your part. It's not proof you're bad at reading your own feelings or bad at picking people. It's proof you're human, being running the exact same ancient wiring every person before you has run since long before anyone had a word for either fear or love. The wiring was never built to hand you a clean, reliable answer. It was built to get your heart racing fast enough to survive, and it left the rest of the story entirely up to you to sort out afterward, no matter how certain it feels in that moment you're standing inside it. You know that now. Almost nobody else walking around out there does. That one piece of knowledge alone puts you a step ahead of everyone you'll ever go on a date with for the rest of your life. And it's not just about dating. Anyone who you'll encounter. When you leave here, I hope one question follows you home. And why did that sound like a threat? The next time your heart starts racing around someone, were you scared or were you into someone? Now you'll know that's the wrong question. Ask why your body started racing before you decided they were. Sometimes it's chemistry, sometimes it's danger. Your body doesn't know the difference. Now you do. Tell me a moment your body convinced you of a story you later questioned. I want to know what your nervous system made you believe. Next time, we're going to talk about how your brain creates monsters. Fear doesn't just keep you alive. Sometimes it decides what you'll love. Fear is the only honest thing. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.